I really want a quick run, but I gotta go get Jasper from preschool, so I'm sure I can fit 15 minutes in. I'm gonna tell you, but for some reason, I only ever seem to go for a run when I put it in the vlog. Okay, I better have a quick shower and then I'm gonna go get Jasper.
What we do here is go back.
I feel a little bit more fresh and ready to go. Yeah. Sit down outside, I think, and take 30 seconds to try and cool down before I get in the car. This whole ecotricity charging thing, the dust hasn't yet settled, is probably the best way of putting it. And that sort of reminded me of one of the things I actually thought just before I got my Model S. And that is, it's almost like a regressive tax. The people that can afford a Tesla, they wind up actually paying less, so it's even better value for money than one of the other EVs. For example, if I plug into an ecotricity point, I'm going to pull 38 to 40 kilowatts for a full half an hour and not a minute less, and I can do that if I pull in at any level of battery which I'm likely to want to pull in. I wouldn't bother pulling in at 80% anyway. Certainly if I pulled in at 60%, I'd be pulling the 40 kilowatts for the whole half an hour. So for me, the ecotricity points at £6 for 30 minutes are still pretty much, well, they're still a little bit cheaper than diesel anyway. Not a huge amount, but a little bit. For a Renault Zoe driver, however, especially one of the newer Renault Zoes, they're going to be paying more than they would for diesel in their half an hour charge, because they only get 20 kilowatts charge rate. So over half an hour they're going to literally get half the power I will. They still pay the same amount, and that is something I think needs to be addressed. And the other highly unfair thing is, of course, I don't have to use the ecotricity points at all. I can miss out 3 or 4 of them and just drive straight to the supercharger, which is free. Although it's not really. You know, Tesla have massively overcharged for those things. If you look at the amount of power I put in and will put in over the next 8 years versus the £2,000 odd that they added to the purchase price, I'm paying like £20 a charge. In fact, I'm probably paying more than that. I'm probably paying £80 a charge. So they're not that much of a fantastic deal, if we're being completely honest. Right, that's it, time's up. We'll continue this in the car. Ultimately, I don't see how the paying for charging concept can really survive long term. And I don't actually think that it really should, because the problem with paying for charging is you're always going to wind up paying more than you would at home. And the knock-on effect of that is that it's always going to be cheaper for people who have bigger batteries. So the encouragement there is for car manufacturers to just constantly be making bigger and bigger battery electric cars. And I really don't actually think that's necessary. Having a solid 150 miles all-weather range is actually more than enough. Really, anything more than that is just gives you a little bit of extra flexibility. But 500-mile range, the only reason I could see that would be worth having is if there were virtually no quick chargers and they were all totally unreliable and far too expensive. That's the trick with EV quick charging. It needs to be something that is bundled with something else, and that way it's easy to make money from it. I mean, it's a bit like Tesla with their superchargers. They're astronomically expensive if you actually sit down and do the maths. Really, just eye-wateringly expensive, far more expensive than ecotricity, but they don't feel that way. And that's what needs to happen with the other EV manufacturers, I think, especially once they go to sort of a slightly longer range EVs, because at the moment, the people that are trying to drive Nissan Leafs and Renault Zoes across country, and I was one, I'd just like to add, they're not actually using the vehicle the way it was designed to be used by the manufacturer, and that would be Nissan or Renault's defense there. They would say, well, we don't really want to support the long-range quick charge infrastructure because actually we're selling them as city cars. What they don't realise is nobody wants to buy just a city car, and if they do, they want something more like a Think City, though perhaps something that looks a little nicer than one of those. There you go. That's my 2 pence worth on the subject. I think it's a very difficult thing, and it's a very difficult thing to get right. And I think Ecotricity have worked their way into a very good position by having an exclusive contract with all the motorway service stations, and I'm sure they're going to make good money out of that over time. I think they need to be careful not to, damage the nascent EV, market out there. There still aren't a huge number of EVs. They need to be seen as a cheaper alternative to petrol or diesels, because environmental reasons are very bad at encouraging consumers to change their behaviour one way or the other. It's like that polar bear advert they had, hug a polar bear. Oh my word. But you do an advert which is fun and interesting and exciting, like when they did a sort of rally round a village at night to demonstrate how sort of quiet but fun it was. That was a good advert. So yeah, that's what I think. They need to tread carefully. I really don't. Yeah, it's a very difficult. It really is a very difficult situation, and I do think it's grossly unfair that the people that have the more expensive EVs, they're disproportionately cheaper. My advice to anyone and everyone would be get a Tesla Model 3 when they turn up, because one thing I've always known is that Tesla actually gets the concept of EVs. They understand it. They know what EV drivers need, and they know how to provide that and how to make it seem like an attractive, worth having package. And that's Tesla in a nutshell. Jasper's been fruit picking today, so the preschool have got his car seat, which you might have noticed is not in the back. And one very nice benefit of that is it means that the car doesn't rattle like crazy. There's something about that seat, it rattles around like a penny in the bottom of a tin can. So it's nice to be driving a less rattly car. And I have to say, without it, actually, having done almost 50,000 miles, this car still feels as well put together and as solid as a car that's only done 10,000 miles, if that. I think probably the reason why this car doesn't rattle that much is actually one of the benefits of an EV is because you don't have an engine that's sort of constantly vibrating and trying to sort of tear itself loose from the car. Everything sort of stays a little bit better bolted together. At least that's been my experience. I remember thinking that with the Nissan Leaf as well when I had that. Did sort of 36,000 miles in 2 years with that, and at the end of all of that it was still nice and quiet and had that sort of well put together feel. You know what I mean? You go over a pothole or something and the car goes thud instead of thunk. Okay, yeah, I did that really badly, but you get the idea. Let's go home. You gonna have a little sleep?
Well, I want you to fly.
All right, well, I'll tell you what, we'll see. If you fall asleep on the way home, then you have to have a sleep, and if you don't, then you can do a little bit of play before you sleep, okay?
I don't want to go to sleep.
Okay, we'll see.
I want to fly.
I hope you've all enjoyed today's vlog post. If you have, remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all tomorrow for the next instalment of my daily vlog. Bye.